And Landon, we've had this conversation so many times that the general thesis that I kind of recall is that, the reason Delta has suffered as much as it has been that they were kind of that higher service, higher quality airline. And coronavirus, in a way, was the great equalizer, eliminated so many of those services, exposed some of the policies that weren't as consumer friendly, like the cancellations. So I got a quick question for you, and then I just want to hear kind of how the data is going for this quarter and Delta in particular. But I think this is an important answer, and it's not a one-size-fits-all answer, so I'm just kind of interested to see your kind of take on it. But Landon, there's a key difference, I think, into why people aren't traveling as much. Is it because they're scared, and that may be, a sizable part of the population, or is it because there's no reason to travel places? There's no corporate travel. If you're going to travel somewhere and there's restrictions and you can't do anything, why would you travel there? And so I think, at least, anecdotally, that at this point in all of this, it's got to be more the latter. And once things are reopened and there's more incentive to go places, corporate travel maybe starts to come back, there's going to be more travel. It's just kind of a logical path that I'm following. Tell me how I'm wrong and if I am.
Sure. I think that there's definitely a portion of the population that is a little bit fearful or cautious about, contracting the disease, and they don't want to fly for that reason. But I think the majority of people are not flying because there's nowhere to go. If you're thinking about taking a vacation or, go seeing a friend or something like that, what are you going to do when you get there? Many of the restaurants are not open or unappealing, or they have early closing times or things like that. And many of the big parks or places that you may want to go are just not open, or they have very limited capacity. And so there's just nowhere to go. And of course, about half of when we talk about Delta, about half of the revenue comes from corporate travel. And almost every business is now not traveling. I can't remember the last time I took a business flight. I miss it a lot. But yeah, there's just nowhere to go. The conferences are all shut down. Meetings are now being held over Zoom. I think that will come back in the future because there is a disconnect sometimes when you do things virtually versus in person. There's a lot of things you can do in person that you just can't do virtually. But I think there's going to be a permanent slight decline in business travel. But I think really when it comes to non-business travel, you've got to have places that are open. You've got to have an appeal, a desire to go somewhere. And I think that is a huge portion of the reason. So there's not a lot, unfortunately, that these airlines can do. They just have to hope that things open back up soon and get people traveling again. So I think that's really the key. And when we look at Delta's purchase intent information on, LikeFolio's data, it shows that. It shows a monster drop off, and you can see it. I mean, there was a little bit of a confusion spike around March or April when people were talking about, can I fly, should I fly, that kind of thing. But it has dropped off dramatically since then. And you can see every year there's a nice little bump in the summer as people take their vacations. And there was a very small bump here. So people are still wanting to do that. And we're getting a little bit of an uptrend, very little, but it has just been decimated as far as the purchase intent, people talking about flying. They are recovering a little bit this quarter. This quarter, when we look at the quarterly bars chart, you can kind of break it down by fiscal quarter, and you can see that the current quarter that's being reported tomorrow, they're up about 15% over the previous quarter. And the one that's been going on for another, 12 days now. I think their quarter ended September 30th. So that far right bar is up a little bit as well. So slight comeback, but obviously this is not, you're not investing in Delta because they're slightly better than terrible. So it's a bad situation right now for the airlines. I do think it's a good move by them cutting all those cancellation fees. Evelyn talked about how they're going to miss out on $800 million in revenue, but they do about $47 billion a year. So that's a very small portion. Was that about 2% of their revenue? And if it's kind of like a money back guarantee on a product, you're more likely to buy the product if you're not committed to it. And so I think that's going to be a good move for them overall. I think they're going to see an increase in bookings that's going to make up for that 2% loss in revenue. And I'm glad to see it. I think it's great for the consumers. And hopefully when things get back to normal over the next, 6 months or year or so, these airlines can come back. And when the weather starts warming up again in May, then people start taking places. They'll start traveling because there'll be places open to go.
Landon, I need your help. I mean, in this topic and in general in life, I need your help. And I want to know is what happened. Connect the dots for our viewers. on what Delta did, because they were always, in terms of customer satisfaction, I remember LikeFolio data with Delta being one of the higher ones up there, and they seem to have dropped. Is it people? Is the reason for the drop in Delta, and in terms of customer happiness and things like that, is it because of the ticket charge? And I've read articles that their tickets were like the hardest to change, and they didn't cancel the fees to change early, and that made a lot of people angry. So help our viewers with the reasons why Delta has dropped, and some of the airlines have come back, but not Delta so much.
Yeah, so Delta used to be Southwest and Delta, 1 and 2, and they kind of went back and forth when it came to consumer happiness. Right now, Southwest still holds the #1 spot, but Delta's dropped off to #3. And I think a lot of that does have to do with the frustration around change fees, because normally, a lot of back in the day, if you had to cancel, it was kind of your fault. You screwed up, something happened, unless you were in the hospital randomly, which is a very low percentage of the time. So people kind of ate those change fees. But now, obviously, if you had a situation where you may have been exposed or whatever to the virus, and you had to late cancel, it's very frustrating for an airline to tell you, well, that's $200 per leg for everyone that's traveling. That can add up. And of course, if it appears that way, but you're able to call and get the cancellation, that still appears that way to people. And so that's frustrating to them, or at least it's a disincentive to book. And so, with a company like Southwest, if you have to change your flight, you can do it so easily. You can do it on the mobile app, on your phone, on the website, 2 clicks and you're done. With Delta, I had to cancel a flight recently, and I called and I got everything waived and it was fine, but I couldn't do it online very easily. So I think they really need to revamp the way that they handle that kind of situation to make sure people are comfortable knowing that, no, you don't have to pay if you're going to cancel your fees. And I think they're just a little bit slow to react to that, because other than that, it's a great airline. They have great customer service. Everything seems to work out. They treat you right. But I think just on this, because it's such a new policy change, that the consumers just haven't figured out that it's there yet, and it's not easily done. It's a UI UX type of issue with Delta as far as their website and their app goes. Once they catch back up to Southwest, I think they'll be fine, but a little bit of lost customer happiness in the meantime.